Is West Africa on the brink of conflict? Burkina Faso's President Ibrahim Traore has made shocking claims about an economic blockade and military operations against his country. But what's really going on behind the scenes? Welcome to AfroPage, where we bring you the latest news from across Africa. Today we're looking at a tense situation unfolding in West Africa. President Ibrahim Traore of Burkina Faso has accused neighboring countries Ivory Coast and Benin of blocking goods meant for his country. This could lead to shortages and price hikes in Burkina Faso, a landlocked nation that depends on its neighbors for trade. But that's not all. Traore also claims there are French military bases in Benin set up to destabilize Burkina Faso. These allegations come after Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger formed the Sahel Confederation and left ECOWAS. Could this move have triggered a regional crisis? Stay tuned as we break down this complex situation and its potential impact on West Africa's stability. Now, let's take a closer look at the economic side of this unfolding drama. President Ibrahim Traore's accusations against Ivory Coast and Benin go beyond military concerns. He claims these neighboring countries are engaging in what could be called economic warfare against Burkina Faso. According to Traore, Ivory Coast and Benin are blocking goods meant for Burkina Faso. This isn't just a minor inconvenience, it's a potential economic disaster for the landlocked nation. Burkina Faso relies heavily on its coastal neighbors for trade, including essential items like food and fuel. Without access to ports, the country's economy could grind to a halt. The impact of this alleged blockade could be severe. President Traore warns it might lead to empty shelves in stores, skyrocketing prices, and a lot of unhappy citizens. Imagine not being able to find basic necessities or having to pay much more for them. That's the situation Burkina Faso might face if these accusations are true. But why would Ivory Coast and Benin take such drastic action? Traore suggests it's all part of a bigger plan. He believes they're trying to economically asphyxiate Burkina Faso. In his words, if you reject us, we will block you, or put in biblical terms, a tit for tat. This alleged economic pressure isn't happening in a vacuum. It's connected to recent political moves in the region. Burkina Faso, along with Mali and Niger, recently formed the Sahel Confederation. They also left the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS. Traore thinks the blockade is retaliation for these decisions. The potential blockade highlights just how vulnerable Burkina Faso's economy is. In 2017, gold made up 78.5% of the country's exports. Without access to ports, getting this valuable resource to international markets becomes much harder. And it's not just about gold. About 80% of Burkina Faso's working population is involved in agriculture. These farmers depend on good trade relations with neighboring countries to sell their produce. If the blockade continues, it could lead to more than just economic problems. There's a risk of increased political and social instability within Burkina Faso. When people can't access basic goods or afford to feed their families, unrest often follows. Some observers think there might be more to this story. They suggest the economic pressure could be a strategy to push Burkina Faso back into ECOWAS. By making life difficult for Burkina Faso economically, Ivory Coast and Benin might hope to change the country's political course. As the situation unfolds, one thing is clear. The economic health of Burkina Faso hangs in the balance. The coming weeks and months will show whether these accusations are true and what impact they'll have on the people of this West African nation. Now let's take a closer look at these shocking claims about French military bases in Benin. President Ibrahim Traore's accusations go beyond just economic issues. He's pointing fingers at France, saying they're trying to destabilize Burkina Faso from across the border. In a recent speech, Traore didn't hold back. He said, "We have nothing against the Beninese people, we have a problem with the policy of the Beninese leaders. There are indeed 2 bases, runways have been redeveloped, planes are landing, people are equipping and training terrorists there." That's a big claim, and Traore says he's got proof to back it up. But here's where things get interesting. Benin's President Patrice Talon is telling a different story. He says there are no French military bases in his country. In fact, he even invited Niger's government to come and see for themselves. But Niger didn't take him up on the offer. So who's telling the truth? It's hard to say for sure, but there's more to this story. A photo has surfaced showing President Talon meeting with François Lecointre, a French army general. This general has been vocal about France's role in Africa. In an interview with Le Figaro, he said, "Europe must come back to reoccupy Africa with their armies." That's a statement that's sure to raise eyebrows across the continent. To understand why these claims are such a big deal, we need to look at the history between France and West Africa. France used to rule many countries in this region, including Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. Even after these countries became independent, France kept a strong presence there. For years, France has had military bases in West Africa. They say it's to help fight terrorism and keep the region stable. But many people in these countries aren't happy about it. They feel like France is still trying to control them, even though colonialism officially ended decades ago. This tension has been growing for a while. Recently, Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger decided they'd had enough. They formed a new group called the Sahel Confederation and left ECOWAS, a bigger West African organization. Some people think this move upset France and other countries in the region. Now, Burkina Faso is looking for new friends. They're turning to countries like Russia and Turkey for help, especially when it comes to military equipment. This shift is changing the balance of power in West Africa. And not everyone is happy about it. So, when President Traore talks about French bases in Benin, he's touching on a sensitive topic. It's not just about military strategy, it's about who has power and influence in West Africa. These accusations, if true, could have big consequences for the whole region. While accusations fly between countries, a new alliance has emerged that's shaking up West Africa. Let's take a closer look at the Sahel Confederation. A bold move by Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger that's changing the game in the region. These three countries decided to team up and form the Sahel Confederation. But why? Well, they're facing some tough challenges together: terrorism, economic problems, and political instability. By joining forces, they hope to tackle these issues head-on. But here's the kicker. To form this new group, Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger left the Economic Community of West African States, or ECOWAS. This was a big deal. ECOWAS has been a major player in West African politics and economics for years. Leaving it wasn't a decision these countries made lightly. So why did they do it? The leaders of these countries felt that ECOWAS wasn't helping them solve their problems effectively. They wanted more control over their own destinies. By creating the Sahel Confederation, they're saying, "We can handle our own affairs, thank you very much." One of the key figures in this new alliance is Captain Ibrahim Traore, the president of Burkina Faso. At just 34 years old, he's the youngest head of state in the world. And he's becoming quite popular, especially among young people who are tired of what they see as outside interference in their countries. As one observer put it, Traore's got some fans, especially among those who are tired of what they see as neo-colonial influence. They're cheering him on like he's the next revolutionary hero. This new alliance is shaking things up in West Africa. It's challenging the way things have been done for a long time, especially when it comes to France's influence in the region. Some people see it as a way for these countries to stand up against what they view as continued colonial control. The Sahel Confederation is giving these countries a chance to work together on their biggest problems. They're hoping that by joining forces, they can fight terrorism more effectively and boost their economies without relying on outside help. As one commentator noted, despite these challenges, some see Traore as a beacon of hope against foreign interference. It's like he's playing chess while everyone else is playing checkers. But it's not all smooth sailing. Leaving ECOWAS could have some serious consequences. These countries might find themselves cut off from important economic partnerships. And as we've seen with the alleged blockades by Ivory Coast and Benin, other countries in the region aren't too happy about this new alliance. The birth of the Sahel Confederation marks a big shift in West African politics. It's a bold move by countries that are tired of the status quo and want to chart their own course. Whether it will succeed in addressing the region's problems remains to be seen. But one thing's for sure, the political landscape of West Africa will never be the same. Now, you might be wondering how Burkina Faso's president is so confident about what's happening across the border. Well, it turns out Burkina Faso has been quietly building up its military capabilities, and they've got some new toys that are changing the game. Let's talk about drones. Not just any drones, but some serious military-grade equipment. Burkina Faso recently got its hands on 2 Akinci long-range combat drones and 5 Bayraktar TB2 drones from Turkey. These aren't your average camera drones, they're advanced machines that can do a lot more than take pretty pictures. These drones are giving Burkina Faso a whole new view of what's happening in the region. They can keep an eye on things inside the country, but that's not all. They also have the ability to look beyond Burkina Faso's borders into places like Ivory Coast and Benin. This new technology might explain why President Traore is so sure about his claims. With these drones, Burkina Faso can gather information that was out of reach before. It's like having a super-powered telescope that can see through walls. But Burkina Faso isn't just using these drones for itself. The country is sharing what it learns with its new friends in the Sahel Confederation, Mali and Niger. This cooperation is making the 3 countries stronger together. Here's something interesting an expert said. The bottom line is that Burkina Faso now has the capability to detect what is happening around her. This new ability is changing how Burkina Faso interacts with its neighbors and deals with regional issues. Now let's zoom out a bit and look at the bigger picture. Burkina Faso getting these drones from Turkey is part of a larger trend. More and more African countries are looking beyond their traditional partners for military equipment. They're turning to countries like Turkey, Russia, and Iran. This shift is pretty significant. It's not just about getting new military toys, it's about changing who African countries depend on and work with. For a long time, many West African countries relied heavily on their former colonial powers, like France. But now they're branching out. The numbers show how big this change is. Turkey's defense and aerospace exports to Africa jumped from $83 million in 2020 to $288 million in 2021. That's a huge increase in just 1 year. This move towards getting military tech from different sources is part of a bigger change in how African countries see the world. They're not just looking to 1 or 2 big powers anymore. Instead, they're dealing with many different countries, creating a more complex web of relationships. For Burkina Faso, this new military equipment, especially the drones, is more than just a way to protect its borders. It's a statement. It's saying, we're here, we're watching, and we're not relying on the same old partners anymore. This technological edge is giving Burkina Faso a new kind of power in West Africa, and it's clear that President Traore isn't afraid to use it. With tensions rising in West Africa, the region finds itself at a major turning point. The recent events we've discussed could have far-reaching consequences for the entire area. What does this mean for the future of West African stability? The formation of the Sahel Confederation and the departure from ECOWAS mark a significant shift in regional politics. These moves show a growing resistance to what some see as outside influence, especially from former colonial powers like France. It's a bold statement of independence that's shaking up the status quo. But this new direction comes with risks. The alleged economic blockade and military tensions could lead to increased instability in the region. Will other countries follow Burkina Faso's lead, or will this move isolate them further? And how will these changes affect the fight against terrorism and economic development in West Africa?